Good morning, students. Welcome to the subject of business organization and management. And we are to start today with unit number 4, that is all about the change management, or we can call it management of change. As you can see, we are going to deal with these many types of aspects of the management of change, right? To start with, it is the introduction to change. See, it is a saying that nothing is certain but change, right? Nothing is possible, or nothing is sure than change. So everything in the world is always subject to change, right? And so is the case with the most of the organization. We all know that what is permanent is only the change. So nothing is permanent except change. So change is any alterations of status quo. Change means any type of difference that comes up in the static condition that can be considered as change. It's the act of progress or process through which something becomes different. So change is something which substitutes something else. So the term change refers to any kind of variation which occurs in the overall work environment of an organization, and it implies alterations in any structural relationship or maybe even the role of the people in the organization. So કોઈ પણ પ્રકારનો બદલાવ છે જે એક ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનમાં કોઈ પણ કારણોથી આવે છે, જેને લીધે કંઈ પણ જે વર્તમાન પરિસ્થિતિ છે એમાં કંઈ પણ ફેરબદલ થાય છે, તો દેટ કેન બી કન્સિડર્ડ એઝ ચેન્જ. સો એન ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન એક્ઝિસ્ટ ઇન સચ અ બિઝનેસ એન્વાયરમેન્ટ વેર નથિંગ ઇઝ સ્ટેટિક ઓર પરમનન્ટ. વી ઓલ નો દેટ નથિંગ ઇઝ સ્ટેટિક, નથિંગ ઇઝ પરમનન્ટ, રાઇટ? એવરીથિંગ કીપ્સ ઓન ચેન્જિંગ. સે ફ્રોમ technical breakthroughs to economic shocks, every single day there is the change that we notice. Thus, change is very important characteristics of most of the organization. It is the requirement of the organization to have to develop a kind of adaptability to the change, or result would be fatal, right? So what we are trying to say here is that change is certain, change is sure to come, nothing except change is permanent. So organization has to keep itself on the toes and have to be adaptable to any changes. એ જો બદલાવ માટે તૈયાર ના થાય તો it may be very fatal for it to survive, right? Or it may so happen that it may be left behind in the competition also. Or at times ઘણી વખત બદલાવ કારણ કે ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનની અંદર કે પોલિસીસની અંદર કે સર્કમસ્ટાન્સીસની અંદર નથી લાવવામાં આવતો, તો એને લીધે it may so happen that it may be completely swiped away from the say competition also. Thus, change in organization is not only desirable but also inevitable. એટલા માટે ચેન્જ ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનની અંદર જરૂરી નથી પણ અત્યંત જરૂરી છે, ઇનેવિટેબલ, એના વગર ચાલે જ નહીં એવી આ પ્રક્રિયા છે. So an organization is an open system, which means that it is in a constant interactional relationship with the external environment. કોઈ પણ ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન હોય, કોઈ પણ સંસ્થા હોય, કોઈ પણ બિઝનેસ હોય, એ ખાલી એકલતામાં in vacuum all by itself it cannot work. It keeps a kind of complete relationship with the external world, and that is why all the external factors affected. So any change, any minor change in the external factor may lead to the change in the enterprise or maybe in the business, or it may imbalance the activities of enterprise. Thus, change means something that is different from the present or past, right? So in this chapter, we are more concerned with organizational change. Here we are going to take care of organizational change, right? So, however, it would be difficult to understand the organizational change unless we are not clear with what is change, right? So, overall we have got the idea કે કોઈ પણ પ્રેઝન્ટ અથવા તો પાસ્ટની પરિસ્થિતિમાં જે પણ ફેરબદલ આવે છે એને ચેન્જ કહી શકાય. સો સક્સેસફુલ ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન હેઝ ટુ ઓલવેઝ અડોપ્ટ ટુ ધ ચેન્જ કન્ટિન્યુઅસલી in order to stay ahead of others in the competitive race. So the organizational changes may be required on the persistent basis. That means સતત organizational change ની જરૂર પડતી હોય છે. It's the adoption of new ideas or behaviors by the organization. It's the way of kind of modifying existing organization. Change છે એ જ existing organizationની જે પેટર્ન છે એને modify કરે છે. So the motive of such modifications may be to increase the organization's effectiveness. અને કોઈ પણ બિઝનેસમાં, કોઈ પણ એન્ટરપ્રાઇઝની અંદર જો કોઈ પણ પ્રકારનો ચેન્જ આવે છે તો અલ્ટિમેટ ઓબ્જેક્ટિવ શું છે, તો કે ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનની ઇફેક્ટિવનેસ વધારવાનો છે. Thus, change management can be defined as any approach to transitioning individual, teams or organization using method intended to redirect the use of resources, business process, budget allocation or other modes of operations that significantly reshapes a company or organization. So change management is defined as any approach, કોઈ પણ approach જે ઇન્ડિવિડ્યુઅલને ટ્રાન્ઝિટ કરે અથવા તો ઇન્ડિવિડ્યુઅલને ફેરવે છે, ટીમવર્કને, ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનની મેથડ્સને અથવા તો યુઝ ઓફ રિસોર્સિસને, બિઝનેસ પોલિસીઝને, પ્રોસેસીસને, બજેટ અલોકેશનને, એ એક મોડ ઓફ ઓપરેશન્સમાં કોઈપણ પ્રકારનો સિગ્નિફિકન્ટ જે બદલાવ આવે છે એને આપણે ચેન્જ કહી શકીએ ઇન ધી ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન. સો ઇટ્સ ઓફ ધ ટોપ મોસ્ટ પ્રાયોરિટી ટુ મેનેજ ધ ચેન્જ, કારણ કે ચેન્જ સર્ટેન છે, ઇટ ઇઝ શ્યોર ટુ કમ, right? And if you don't adopt the changes, you will be, as I told you earlier also, it will be very difficult for organization to survive in the long future. તો એ શક્ય નથી થતું, એટલે દરેક ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશને હંમેશા ચેન્જ મેનેજમેન્ટને પ્રાયોરિટીમાં લેવું પડે, બિકોઝ ઇફ યુ ડોન્ટ ચેન્જ યુ વિલ પેરિશ એટલે ખતમ થઈ જાઓ, રાઈટ? સો ઇટ ઇઝ અ વેરી રેશનલ ડિસિઝન ટુ take the changes wherever required. So managing change is certainly not a new aspect in the management or organization. Thus, change management is such a kind of process. It can be considered as tools and techniques to manage the people of the organization. So the change management is necessary so as to achieve the required business outcomes. Thus, change management is not only managing the technical side of the change but also helps the employees to adapt the changes. રાઈટ? તો ચેન્જ છે એ આવવો સર્ટેન છે, ચેન્જ આવશે જ, બદલાવ આવશે જ, રાઈટ? પણ એને કેવી રીતે મેનેજ કરવું, કઈ રીતે એમ્પ્લોઈઝને એડેપ્ટેબલ બનાવવા, કઈ રીતે આખી પરિસ્થિતિ પોઝિટિવ લઈ આવવી, સો દેટ ધ ઇફેક્ટિવનેસ ઓફ ધી ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન કેન બી ઇમ્પ્રુવડ, રાઈટ? દેટ ઇઝ ધ પર્પઝ ઓફ લર્નિંગ ચેન્જ મેનેજમેન્ટ. સો એપ્લિકેશન ઓફ ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનલ ચેન્જીસ ઇન્ટેન્શનલ એન્ડ ઇટ ઇઝ ઓલ્સો પ્લાન્ડ. સો ઘણી બધી વખત ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનલના ઇન્ટેન્શન્સ હોય, એના ધ્યેય પણ હોય, એનું એક વિચાર પણ હોય અને પ્લાન્ડ ચેન્જ પણ હોઈ શકે, સો એઝ ટુ ઇમ્પ્રૂવ ધ ઇફેક્ટિવનેસ ઓફ ધી ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન. સો ઇટ હેઝ બીન ઓબ્ઝર્વડ that change management is based on a broad set of disciplines ranging from, say, social sciences to information technology. So any change in strategy is driven towards the organization. So it may affect due to many factors relevant. Thus, change management is any attempt that is undertaken to meet the modifications occurring, may be accidental or intentional. Last two lines are very very important. Change management કોને કહી શકાય? તો કે એક એવી એટેમ્પ્ટ છે જે કોઈપણ મોડિફિકેશન, કોઈપણ ચેન્જીસ જે અકર થાય છે, જે ઉદ્ભવે છે, એ એક્સિડેન્ટલ હોય, દેટ મીન્સ ઇટ મે બી અનપ્લાન્ડ, અચાનક આકસ્મિક હોય, અથવા તો ઇન્ટેન્શનલ હોય, પ્લાન્ડ હોય. એના માટે ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનને તૈયાર કરે, એના માટે મોડિફિકેશન્સ લેવા માટે જે ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન તૈયાર થાય છે એને ચેન્જ મેનેજમેન્ટ કહેવાય, રાઈટ? સો હિયર વી આર ગોઈંગ ટુ લર્ન ફ્યુ ઓફ ધ કેરેક્ટરિસ્ટિક્સ ઓફ the organizational change. That is number one, change is dynamic process. We all know with the change in the time, say from the stone age to agriculture age, machine age, we have been constantly changing, right? So it's a dynamic process. It is the in this continuity that it is a dynamism process, or it is a dynamic process. It keeps on changing. So change itself means dynamic, so it is a dynamic process. Next is, it is a continuous process. કોઈક ને કોઈક માત્રામાં સમય બદલાય અથવા તો સમય સાથે ચેન્જીસ આવતા જ રહેશે. તો સિરીઝ ઓફ કન્ટિન્યુઅસ વેરિએશન્સ મે બી there in the situations, right, in the event. So it is a continuous process. Next, change can be bring about the best work. Many times what happens is that change is for betterment, right? સારા માટે, ભલા માટે changes થતા હોય, and with this hope it is always that it brings out the best from the person. So it always tries to get best out of the work, and that is why change has this characteristic. So it helps, and it helps the person or organization to grow and develop his own skill or maybe organizational skill. The fourth characteristic is the change takes place at the forward and fast pace. We all know this, right? That change comes up at a forward change is always for the future, right? It may come at a fast pace, means fast અથવા તો speedy changes આવી શકે. And there is no chance of the slow or backward pace of change. Backward pace of change ક્યારેય નથી હોતું. આપણે પાસ્ટમાં જઈને કોઈ પણ વસ્તુને બદલી નથી શકતા. So it is always forward looking, and it may not be slow all the time. It may be coming up in a fast pace. Next is change does not take place in vacuum, right? Change એમને બિલકુલ શૂન્યતામાંથી ઉદ્ભવતું નથી. ચેન્જ ઇઝ વેન દેર ઇઝ સમથિંગ ટુ ચેન્જ એન્ડ સમવન ટુ ફીલ ધ ચેન્જ. ચેન્જ ત્યારે જ આવે છે જ્યારે કંઈક બદલવાની જરૂર છે અથવા તો કોઈકને એ બદલાવની અસર થતી હોય. સો ચેન્જ કેન નોટ ટેક પ્લેસ ઇન વેક્યુમ. ઇટ અકર્સ લાઇક અ સિસ્ટમ એન્ડ ગ્રેજ્યુઅલ વેરિએશન્સ. અને એટલે ચેન્જ છે એ ગ્રેજ્યુઅલી ઇવેન્ચ્યુઅલી ધીરે ધીરે આવે છે. નેક્સ્ટ કમ્સ અપ ઇઝ ચેન્જ ઇઝ યુનિવર્સલ. સો ચેન્જ લાઇક ડેથ એન્ડ taxes is permanent, right? Somebody has rightly said that nothing is as permanent as change. So process of change is not restricted to one system. કોઈ એક સિસ્ટમ, એક કન્ટ્રી, એક ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન, એક ફેમિલી, એક કલ્ચરને લઈને ચેન્જ નથી આવતો. ઇટ ઇઝ ઓલવેઝ દેટ ઇટ ઇઝ અ યુનિવર્સલ પ્રોસેસ. દેટ મીન્સ ઇટ ઇઝ ઓલ પરવેસિવ, ઓમની પ્રેઝન્ટ. બધી જ જગ્યાએ આખી સૃષ્ટિમાં ક્યાંક ને ક્યાંક ફેરફાર આવતા જ હોય છે સતત પ્રમાણમાં. Next is one change leads to another. We all know how our lifestyle has changed in the last few months, right? So one change leads to the change in another. That means એક બદલાવ આવે તો એની સાથે એવું બને કે series of changes may come up, right? Because it is a relative process. એક બદલાવ છે એ બીજાને અફેક્ટ કરતો હોય in one or the other ways, and that is why it is a kind of one change leading to the another one. Next is change is a natural phenomenon. કુદરતી પ્રક્રિયા છે. ધ ચેન્જ એનીવેર ઇઝ નેચરલ. ઇટ કેન નોટ બી સ્ટેટિક. એક ધારો અથવા તો સ્થિર બદલાવ ક્યારેય નથી હોતો. ઇટ ઇઝ અ નેચરલ પ્રોસેસ. એટલે ધીમે ધીમે કોઈ પણ નેચરની કોઈ પણ વસ્તુમાં, કોઈ પણ સોસાયટીમાં, કોઈ પણ સમાજમાં, કોઈ પણ ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનમાં બદલાવ બહુ નેચરલ છે, બહુ સ્વાભાવિક છે. ઇટ ઇનિશિએટ્સ ફ્રોમ ધ નેચર. એઝ સનરાઇઝ એન્ડ સનસેટ્સ આર નેચરલ, સો ઇઝ ઓલ્સો ધ ચેન્જ વિચ ઇઝ અ નેચરલ ફિનોમિનન. જેમ સૂર્યનો ઉદય થવો અને સૂર્યનો અસ્ત થવો એ ચેન્જ છે પરિસ્થિતિની અંદર, અને એ કુદરતી છે. એ જ પ્રકારે બધી જ પ્રકારના ચેન્જીસ છે એ can be considered as natural phenomenon. Here we are going to quickly go through the important aspects, right? So now that we know what is change management, let us try to study the various aspects. Okay, for a change management to be successful, the emotional, behavioral and operational aspects must be addressed. If you want to make change management successful, કે માણસો, ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન, એમ્પ્લોઈઝ બધા જ ચેન્જને સ્વીકારી શકે ઇમોશનલી, બિહેવિયરલી અને ઓપરેશનલી, તો એના માટે you have to be prepared, right? Changes can work at the macro levels, and it can even be at the micro levels with the mindsets and approach of a person working in an organization. So that aspect should be kept in mind. Next is change unfolds in a reasonably predictable and manageable series of dynamic phases known as change curves. That means change sudden no હોઈ શકે, gradual છે, phases માં આવે છે, right? So 5 phases of fundamental changes are there. Beginning, right, a fundamental change beginning with stagnation, proceeding through preparation, implementation, determination and ending with a completion. So it comes in a 5 different phases, and one should be prepared about the change curve. Next is, since all the people in all organizations are concerned and involved with change, no study of organizational life would be complete without studying the way changes affect it and how that changes may be managed. All the people in the organization are concerned, right, and involved in the change. કોઈ પણ પ્રકારનો બદલાવ જો ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનની અંદર આવે છે તો એમ્પ્લોઈઝમાં ચેન્જ આવવો બહુ સ્વાભાવિક છે. નો સ્ટડી ઓફ ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનલ લાઈફ વુડ બી કમ્પ્લીટ વિદાઉટ સ્ટડીંગ ધ way the changes takes place, right? So no study will be complete until and unless you can understand and you can manage the change. So most people agree that organizational life is getting more certain as the speed of change increases and future becomes more volatile. That means people agree that organizational life is getting more uncertain. Why? Because changes comes up, and so there will be the eventual changes in the organization also. So it is very important to manage the change. Next comes up is managing change is much broader than managing the projects that implements the change. How individual perceives and react to change is a deep-seated and uncertain. It is very complex study, right? So managing change is very difficult task because individual perception may be different, right? And it may be the changes may affect one person in one way and the others in the other way, and likewise the changes and the reactions to the changes may be different and uncertain, and managing these changes is tough. Next comes up is the word change may evoke anxiety. See, whatever is going in a proper manner or in a gradual manner, we are never worried about it, right? We are fearlessly working for it. But as soon as the change comes up, there is anxiety, there is fear, there is hopelessness. But change should not be regarded as all doom and gloom, right? All changes do not bring gloom. That means it's not gloomy, it's not bad, it's not the doomsday every time when it comes to changes. It's eventually leading to positive result, and one must be ready for that. Next comes up is environment can be and is influenced by the decisions and actions of the organization. So any technological advancement, demographic or social economic changes, environmental changes are having a significant impact on the organization. So whatever the macro factors may be there, right? Technological advancement may be there, demographic changes may be there, there may be a major change in the social economic condition of the country or an economy, or there may be environmental changes which we have been experiencing since quite long period of time now, right? So whatever the changes are coming up, it will have definite impact on the organization that are operating, right? So the managers have to be skilled, and what happens is they have to be skilled, and moreover they have to see to it that they are ready to make the changes of the organization also, of the employees also, and they can change the situations ultimately, which leads to the success of the organization. So managing change has always been charming and exciting, though it is a tough and delicate activity for any manager. However, managing change is not by choice, it is an essential activity. See, nobody likes to make any changes in the present condition, but it has to be charming, it has to be exciting, it has to be taken positively, and one must be ready to manage the change, because it's not by choice whether to change or not. That's not the option before us. It is essential activity, it is a must and inevitable activity, right? So whatever changes comes up in the environment keeps total in a total context, it may change the organizational policies, or it may change the organizational working conditions also. So managing change is like managing two opposite forces, desire for stability and desire for change. See, everyone wants to be stable, at the same time everyone wants to grow. So now both these things are totally contradictory, but though you have to manage both these things at a time. So it is the most challenging task for all the managers and the organization, so as to strike a balance between two. That means you want to even have stability, and even you want to change with the time, you want to change with the conditions, and you want to grow. So at that time, you striking a balance between these two is managing the change, and that is why these aspects plays very important role. What we are going to do next is the perspective of organizational changes. There are three perspectives of organizational changes. It is development change, transitional change, and the third one is transformational change. આ ત્રણ perspective, ત્રણ દ્રષ્ટિકોણથી આપણે ચેન્જને જોઈ શકીએ. When it comes to development change, the name itself tells you, that means there is a kind of improvement of the skill, maybe in the method or conditions that for some reason does not measure up the current expectations, and thus to do better or to do more of what already exists. So these kind of changes are considered to be developmental, which is done for a kind of improvement of something, maybe improvement over skills, maybe methods, maybe conditions, right? Then this can be considered as developmental changes or development changes. Next comes up is transitional changes. Now it is introduced to have an organization evolve slowly. ધીમે ધીમે gradual change આવે છે, એને transitional change કહેવાય. તો કે this kind of change involves many transition steps, during which the organization is neither what is once was or what it aims to become. That means it's in a process, right? જે હતું એ પણ નથી અને જે બની જવાનું છે એ પણ નથી. ઇટ ઇઝ ઇન અ પ્રોસેસ ઓફ ટ્રાન્ઝિશન, બદલાવના પ્રોસેસમાં છે. તો દેટ ઇઝ વોટ ઇઝ સેડ ટુ બી ટ્રાન્ઝિશનલ ચેન્જ. સો કરંટ વેઝ ઓફ ડુઈંગ થિંગ્સ આર રિપ્લેસ્ડ by something new. For example, reorganizations, maybe mergers, introducing new services, processes, systems, technologies, and likewise. We can give the live example of whatever the situation has been right now today because of the pandemic all over the world. Right, people have started taking up the organizations at home. That means work from home concept has been so very different, or was so very difficult before few months, right? It was so very new to the world, or maybe to our community, or maybe to our country. But with no time, we have been able to take up these particular change, right? And we are in that transitional form today. We haven't taken up the change, we are in that process right now. So that kind of change can be considered as transitional change, right? Next comes up is transformational change. That means it is catalyzed by a change in the belief, awareness about what is possible and necessary for the organization. So unlike transitional change, the new state is usually unknown until it begins to shape up. ટ્રાન્ઝિશનલ ચેન્જ કેવો છે કે ધીમે 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 ગ્રેજ્યુઅલ આગળ વધે છે. સો વી નો મોર ઓર લેસ વોટ વિલ હેપન. પણ ટ્રાન્સફોર્મેશનલ ચેન્જ છે એ વધારે ડ્રાસ્ટિક છે, ડાયનેમિક છે, રાઈટ. એન્ડ મોસ્ટ ઓફ ધ વેરિયેબલ્સ વેન ઇટ કમ્સ ટુ ટ્રાન્સફોર્મેશનલ ચેન્જ આર અનકન્ટ્રોલ્ડ, રાઈટ. દે રશ or they are like a short circuit happening in the any electrical appliance or maybe wherever the power supply is there, right. So it is radical in nature. That means it is drastic in nature. There may be radical change, say somewhere in organizations, mission, culture, success factors, leadership. આવામાં જો ધરખમ ફેરફારો અથવા તો અચાનક જ કોઈ રેડિકલ બદલાવ આવે છે, ચેન્જ આવે છે, તો એને ટ્રાન્સફોર્મેશનલ ચેન્જ કહેવામાં આવે છે. સો દેર આર થ્રી પર્સપેક્ટિવ્સ એઝ વી હેવ સીન ઇટ: development change, transitional change and the transformational change. Here we are showing the need for organizational change. Why do we need to change? Then only with the heading will come to know the change in the external environment. Naturally કોઈ પણ પ્રકારના ચેન્જ આવે છે એન્વાયરમેન્ટની અંદર. say we talk about the natural environment, when it is the change in the season, accordingly we change. Same way when there is external environment and there changes like say globalization, maybe increase in international trade, say advancement in telecommunication, internet, satellite, and say telecommunication kind of facilities that may be increasing, or maybe features that may be increasing, that may activate the change, right. So these changes are obvious to come. એટલે જેટલા એક્સટર્નલ બાહ્ય વાતાવરણમાં કે જે એન્વાયરમેન્ટ છે એમાં ચેન્જીસ આવે તો ડેફિનેટલી ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનમાં ચેન્જીસ આવે જ છે. ધ નેક્સ્ટ નીડ ઇઝ ધ ચેન્જ ઇન ધ ઇન્ટરનલ એન્વાયરમેન્ટ. જેમ બાહ્ય જે વાતાવરણ છે એ ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ છે અથવા એ વન ઓફ ધ રીઝન, વન ઓફ ધ નીડ છે, એવી જ રીતે અહીંયા પણ ઇન્ટરનલ એન્વાયરમેન્ટની અંદર કોઈ પણ પ્રકારના સ્ટ્રક્ચરલ ચેન્જીસ આવે, એડમિનિસ્ટ્રેટિવ ઓલ્ટરનેટિવ્સ આવે, મે બી આખું યુનિટ છે રીડિઝાઇન થાય છે, ઇનોવેટિવ માર્કેટિંગ સ્ટ્રેટેજીસ કે ફિનાન્શિયલ સ્ટ્રક્ચરમાં કાંઈ બહુ ફેરફાર આવે છે, અને એ આવતા જ હોય છે ફ્રોમ ટાઈમ ટુ ટાઈમ. દેન ધીસ ચેન્જીસ આર મસ્ટ બિકોઝ ઇટ ઇઝ રિક્વાયરમેન્ટ ઓફ ધ ટાઈમ, રાઇટ. ઇટ ઇઝ ધ કોલ ઓફ ટાઈમ એન્ડ વી હેવ ટુ go according to it, and then that will affect the internal environment also, right. So most of the time it is that external and uncontrollable changes may create, which we call it business environment, which we may create a kind of change to the organization, and so also internal environment may bring the changes. Next comes up is to sharpen the company's competitive edge. ઘણી વખત કોમ્પિટિશનને લડવા માટે પોતાની જે કોમ્પિટિટિવ એજ છે એને શાર્પન કરવા માટે, પોતાની સ્વોર્ડને વધારે પાવરફુલને શાર્પન કરવા માટે પણ ચેન્જીસ લાવવા કંપની માટે બહુ જરૂરી હોય છે. સો ડ્યુ ટુ એની રેપિડ ગ્રોથ ઇન સાયન્ટિફિક ઓર ટેકનોલોજીકલ બ્રેક થ્રુઝ, or maybe because of the cutthroat competition in the market, it's very important to have the required changes in one's own organization also, because the changes helps to sharpen the competitive edge of the firm. It helps to strengthen the core competencies. જે પણ આપણી કોર કોમ્પિટન્સીસ છે, જે આપણો પાવર છે, ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન હંમેશા પોતાનું સ્વોટ કરતું હોય છે, રાઈટ. દેટ મીન્સ નોઈંગ ધ સ્ટ્રેન્થ, વીકનેસ એન્ડ ઓપોર્ચ્યુનિટીઝ એન્ડ થ્રેટ્સ. તો ઇફ યુ know your strength, you know your weakness, you know what is opportunity lying in the external environment, then these changes are must to come up, because એ આવશે તો જ આપણે આપણી જે સ્ટ્રેન્થ છે એને વધારે શાર્પન કરી શકશું, એને વધારે કોમ્પિટિટિવ એજ તરીકે વાપરી શકશું અગેન્સ્ટ ધ કટથ્રોટ કોમ્પિટિશન, ઓર મે બી અગેન્સ્ટ એની કાઇન્ડ ઓફ major breakthroughs, right. Next comes up is change in prerequisites of the success. See, many a times because you need success, then success can only be derived when there are some kind of changes. So it is important for the organization to adapt, to have the adaptability of the changes, right. So modifications according to the need of the time and situations are preconditions. Naturally, if you want success, then there has to be modification in the present situation, which may lead to the growth and success of the enterprise. So long-term survival is only assured if there is space for changes. So we have discussed with the need. Here we are going to take up about the sixth, this is a repeated topic, we are going to take up with the forces of organizational changes. See, there are two forces that makes the changes inevitable. એક જે છે એ ઇન્ટરનલ ફોર્સ છે within the organization, and most of the time it is controllable, and the other change is known as the external force, right? So here we are going to discuss about the internal as well as the external force. Now when we are talking about internal force which helps the, આ બધા શું છે, તો આ બધા ડિટર્મિનન્ટ્સ છે, આ બધા એવા પરિબળો છે જે ચેન્જ તરફ લઈ જાય છે. તો ચેન્જ ઇન મેનેજરિયલ પર્સનલ, સપોઝ સમ વન પર્સન વોઝ ટેકિંગ કેર ઓફ ધ હોલ ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન, રાઇટ? નાઉ old managers are often replaced by the new ones because they get retirement, or they get promotion, or they may be transferred somewhere else, and some other person comes up at the same post. Now that person may have his own ideas, his way of working may be different in the organization, and so it will lead to the change in the internal operation of the organization, and this may affect the whole organization and its working. So that is what is said to be change in managerial personnel. That means the person himself changes. Next comes up is changes in the operative personnel. Operative personnel means the new generation of the workers has a better educational qualifications, maybe they have placed greater human values, right? Therefore the profile of the workforce is changing fast. Thus it puts great strain on the organization to bring about the changes to handle the workforce, right? So if the operative people, that means the employees may be working at a bottom level, or maybe upper bottom level who may be working, they have their own educational qualification, they have their own awareness, and they are all knowledgeable in their field, and they are to be treated like that. So when there is change in the operative personnel, there has to be change in the managerial policies also. So manager needs to make the changes accordingly. Next comes up is deficiency in existing structure. See, what happens many a times that the structure of the organization may be obsolete, or maybe outdated, or maybe the old structure may not compete with the new requirement, then at that time changes may be required. So there are so many reasons, like maybe span of management, larger number of people are there, the levels have increased, there was a lack of coordination in the previous structure, then that may lead to the change in the existing structure. So any deficiency, કોઈ પણ પ્રકારની ક્ષતિ જો ઓલ્ડ સ્ટ્રક્ચરમાં રહી ગઈ હોય, તો એને ચેન્જ કરવા માટે, અથવા એ ડેફિશિયન્સીસને, એ લિમિટેશન્સને ઓવરકમ કરવા માટે નવું સ્ટ્રક્ચર લાવવું પડે. તો દેટ ઇઝ ડેફિશિયન્સી ઇન ધ એક્ઝિસ્ટિંગ સ્ટ્રક્ચર, that may lead to the change. Next comes up change in size. Say there may be change in the scale of the organization, there may be increase in specialization, there may be say too much of growth and expansion in the organization, then these may affect the size of the organization, and likewise there will be change in the the organization itself, or in the working. So whenever there is change in size, there has to be the change in the format also. So any change in size and working may lead to the change, and one organization or unit will always try to grab new opportunities and new ideas, and this demand for the change in the size of the organization also. So many a times with the existing size of organization, it may not be possible to grab the opportunity, then at that time we need to extend, we need to enlarge, we need to expand the size of organization. So these are four internal forces. Now what we are going to study are all the external forces. Internal કેવા હતા, within the organization હતા, અને એટલા માટે ઘણા ખરા અંશ સુધી controllable હોય. They are under the control of the managers, or maybe the owners or promoters of the company, right? When we are talking about external forces, they can be considered as those forces which are uncontrollable in nature, right? Like changes in technology. We all know that there has been so many breakthroughs in the technology in past few decades, right? So whatever the technological changes come up, accordingly the organization have to make the changes. With their obsolete technology, they have to come up with the latest technology. Only then they'll be able to survive in the market. So technological change is very important external force. Next comes up is market condition. Naturally whatever the changing market scenario is there or situation is there is a common phenomenon and it occurs, right? So it includes maybe what market includes, it may include consumers, their needs, their preferences, their kind of choices, right? Their trend, everything if changes, then it changes the market condition and the demand condition, and accordingly the changes are expected to be taken up by the organization also. So if they stick, in that case, if they stick to the old trend and preferences or the needs of the consumers, then they will not be able to meet the present consumer demand, and that is not affordable, that is not expected from the organization or company, and that is why they need to change from time to time with the marketing conditions. So that is the second external force. Next comes up is social political force. Organization have no control, right, over these forces, because they are all uncontrollable forces. Whatever the social changes comes up or political changes comes up, that cannot be controlled single-handedly, right? But what can be done is we have to survive there, we have to adapt to meet the changes, and there is all the organization may not be directly impacted with whatever social or political changes may come up. They may be indirectly having the impact, but in both the cases we should be ready for the change. So it is said to be the social and political impact, right, or maybe the force. Next comes up is the domino effect. Now this domino effect is one change that touches of the sequence of related and supporting changes. It's always in the organization that one change may affect the series of changes in the various departments of the organization. When this domino effect is overseen, it may lead to the problems of coordination and control. Thus, before any change is made, the possible consequences of that change must be evaluated and examined to avoid any kind of fatal condition or grave conditions in future. So the domino effect should be kept in mind. See, one change may lead to series of changes further in the various departments. Like if the say for example, the prices of raw material have increased. Now that may affect the production area also, that may affect the marketing area also, or we can say it may affect the finance area also. Because of the change in the price of the raw materials, the cost of production of the say the finished good may be high, that may affect the consumer's preference also, or maybe the marketability of the product also. That means one change may be having series of consequences. Series of એક change છે, એક બદલાવ છે, એ કેટલીય બધા ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટને ને કેટલીય બધી જગ્યાએ અફેક્ટ કરતું હોય, એની અસર છોડતું હોય. તો એ ડોમિનો ઇફેક્ટ છે એ પણ એક્સટર્નલ ફેક્ટર્સને ધ્યાનમાં રાખીને ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન ઉપર એક જ એક્સટર્નલ ફેક્ટરની મલ્ટિપલ ઇફેક્ટ્સ જ્યારે આવતી હોય ત્યારે એને ડોમિનો ઇફેક્ટ કહેવાય, એન્ડ દેટ શુડ બી કન્સિડર્ડ. સો દેટ ઇઝ ઓલ્સો કન્સિડર્ડ એઝ ધ important external factor, right? So in today's session we have studied a few things about what is change, what is management of change, what is its nature, or we can call it characteristics, why change is required, and we have studied most importantly are all those factors which should be considered. જ્યારે change આવે, જ્યારે બદલાવ આવે અથવા ક્યારે બદલાવ આવશે એ વસ્તુને ધ્યાનમાં લેવી હોય તો both the forces, internal forces and external forces, અને પછી એની consequent effect કેવી રહેશે એ study કરવું ખૂબ જરૂરી છે. So that is what is all we have studied in today's session. When we meet next, we will be taking up with the types of organizational changes and other interesting aspect of management of change. Till we meet next, it's a goodbye from my side. Take care of yourselves. Thank you.